interesting fight coming up this weekend. We have Joe Solecki taking on Alex Leko de Silva, and I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey because personally, I remember Alex de Silva's UFC debut more than I should. It was a card in which Alistair Overeem fought Alexei Oleinik in a main event. That really happened 3 years ago. Go back and watch it. And for Alex de Silva, I was sold this flashy striker, this big-time finisher. He was, 20-1? And he was 23 years old, and he was going to come in and rock and shock the world. And realistically, for de Silva, he's had some big-time matchups in his young UFC career, and even bigger than the matchups are some of the fights that have fallen out. Like, he was booked in a fight against Mr. Fiziev, and it didn't happen, so what does he get? He gets Kazula Vargas, and he beats him. He was then booked to fight Tristan Connolly. That fight doesn't happen. Who does he fight? Brad Riddell. And he beats him for a round. He beats him for the first round. But what I was sold with de Silva coming into the UFC was flashy first-round finisher of a striker. He has some submissions available to him, but he represents Astra Fight Team. You know Astra Fight Team. They have a title challenger coming up on the next pay-per-view card, taking on Valentina Shevchenko. It's Tyler Santos' Astra Fight Team. So, big-time opportunities for de Silva. Fights Alexander Yakovlev. And listen, commentary teams all over it. Yakovlev, this is a guy that has on his mantle Gray Maynard. He's fought Damian Maia. Yakovlev
got dropped by Damian Maia, the first punch he threw.
And this fight was in Russia, so it was a big deal for Yakovlev. But in that fight, to start it off, de Silva looks pretty damn good. And then Yakovlev rallies back a little. De Silva gets caught in like a weird point where he's crouched up against the cage. Yakovlev goes... They have it as a guillotine over on Topology, but realistically, it is one of the funkiest chokes, and it was a setup like he was going to go Anaconda, but he didn't. Either way, Yakovlev gets the tap, and he gets the win. So, again, picking up the pieces, you've got de Silva, goes in and fights Kazula Vargas, gets a win. It is what it is. Then he out-wrestles Brad Riddell in the first round. Riddell was a minus 320 favorite. Going back to the stool between round 1 and round 2, Riddell's like, holy crap, I didn't think this was going to happen this way.
And then lights him on fire.
Yeah, and then Riddell rallies right back. So de Silva, again, his record can be deceiving because he has 17 first-round finishes and 13 of them are by knockout. But he's decided to wrestle in the UFC, and I'm very surprised to see, or eager to see, what he'll bring against Joe Solecki. Because if he decides to wrestle against Solecki, he's probably going to get submitted too.
This is my whole thing about Alex de Silva. You bring up he won a round against Yakovlev and he won a round against Riddell. You're right. But that's just because he puts all of his energy into those first 5 minutes, and that's it. That's really all he has. And sometimes you can point and say, oh, this person won a round, they looked really good. De Silva straight up only has 5 minutes of sustainable output in his whole game. It is interesting, because like you said, he has relied a lot more on his wrestling at the UFC stage of his career, or at least a lot more than I ever thought he would, because against someone like Brad Riddell, yes, you're probably not going to want to strike with him for long periods of time, but I did expect de Silva to at least stay on the outside, try to bounce a little bit more on the feet, just get the respect of Brad Riddell in some kind of a striking exchange, but that wasn't really his game plan whatsoever, and if he comes into this fight fighting like he did against Brad Riddell, Joe Solecki's going to get the easiest guillotine choke he has ever seen in his whole entire life, and here's the thing about Joe Solecki. We were just on the UFC stats page, so I saw Jeff Molina's name. Jeff Molina and Joe Solecki's fighting style will never get confused for each other, ever. Like, Joe Rogan always says, oh, if you saw Cub Swanson's silhouette, you know exactly who it is. You might think Joe Solecki's asleep if you saw his silhouette, because he is not the most entertaining fighter. Now, it doesn't matter. Wins and losses are all we keep track of in this sport, but Solecki is one of these control over submission grapplers, and it's not a knock against him, but even go back to the Jim Miller fight.
It's so impressive.
It is. I would never recommend somebody rewatch that fight. We do it so you guys don't have to. But he gets on top of Jim Miller. He holds half guard. He threatens enough to pass, or at least to switch position, to not get the fight stood back up to the feet. But that's about it from Joe Solecki. And I was someone who was in the camp of Solecki could become like a Pat Sabatini maybe if he just put the striking together. They have similar styles of grappling. Maybe you could see sort of the evolution of Solecki. We just haven't really seen his hands grow at all at the UFC level, and that really is going to have to be his next addition to his game if he does want to be taken seriously as a contender, because Jared Gordon was able to expose him somewhat in their fight. Jared Gordon fights like Jim Miller fought in like 2012 kind of. He'll wrestle, he'll grapple, and his way of just being well-rounded and outboxing Joe Solecki really gave Solecki issues when he was trying to get his own takedown attempts. So I like the things I like out of Solecki. It's just there's so much that's missing out of his overall MMA game. I do find it hard to pick him with a lot of confidence in this matchup.
Yeah, like I look at De Silva's win over Kazula Vargas, noted brawler boxer type, and in that fight, 3 of 4 on takedown attempts, 12 minutes and 1 second of control time. If Alex De Silva does that to Joe Solecki this weekend, color me surprised.
He gets tapped.
Like, I just don't see it. I mean, you look at Solecki, Jim O. John Salter's the head guy at that gym. You look at it, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt for Solecki. He's grown a beard now. He's a father. Things are changing for Joe Solecki. The guy's a man! He's a man. And listen, for De Silva, I wish we get to see him more often because I think part and parcel, he is an interesting prospect. I mean, going into his fight against Kazula Vargas, Michael Bisping was polishing that up. He was all over it, saying how big of a prospect he was. You look at the fight that, Mr. Solecki, or rather, Mr. De Silva was supposed to have last year. It fell out, but Devontae Smith, no longer with the UFC, Devontae Smith. But that would have been a fun one. But I look at this fight, Matt. Solecki open to minus 245 favorite, minus 175 right now for De Silva, open to plus 205, plus 145 at this current juncture. Over-under on Topology. Surprise us it is to you. I'm going to say over-under 72.5% Solecki.
I'll say over.
The fans say over. 1,252 total votes. 83% Solecki, 73% by decision. For the 17% that have De Silva, 57% by decision, 19% by knockout. Listen, I will say this. Alex De Silva is a better striker than Joe Solecki. We know this. And in the first round, could you catch Joe Solecki taking pictures?
Without a doubt.
Smelling the flowers? Yeah, he could. So that is a definite possibility. I like the evolution of a grappler that Alex De Silva, the added components to his game. That's something that could take you far, but not against Joe Solecki. So I have Solecki in this fight.
I have Solecki in this fight too, but we need to see a new part of his game if he does want to get out of sort of this.
I don't think we ever will.
I don't think, okay, but he's still young, and that's why I posed the question, whether you think he can or not. We've seen crazier things than someone at the age of 28 add a striking component to their game. Charles Oliveira went from not really knowing what he's doing on the feet to dropping Justin Gaethje and choking him out. So anything can happen in MMA. It's just that needs to be the next evolution in Solecki's game, because right now, he's almost like the male version of like an Erin Blanchfield, if you will. He needs the takedown. He needs the top control, because there really is no plan B yet in his career. I still think the plan A will be good enough for all the reasons you had laid out as well. So I do like Joe Solecki, but this should be an interesting fight.
Blanchfield's got the left head kick. Joe Solecki's got jab. So we'll see what happens coming up this weekend. Both of us going with the man out of North Carolina, Joe Solecki, to get the win. Let us know who you have in this one. Is it Brazil's Leko De Silva, or is it Jim O. Solecki? We got some big-time fights left on this card that you're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say.
Let's get into it.